All of you studied in Montfort
Hi,
only?
we are live.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Welcome to week 14 of Psychological Horizons. And this is one of our favorite and incredible sessions here with individuals who work with industries and organizations as organization consultants who draw, knowledge from their psychological background and utilize it in industry setup. So we're very excited to have Arun as our moderator and Avni and Varsha as our panelist. So I'll take a moment introducing them and then we can go live. We can go live with the conversation I meant. So, uh, just to introduce myself, I'm Varsha. I am a research executive. I work for the marketing research consultancy, and on a day-to-day basis, I build questionnaires. Get to do analysis with data, and that's basically me. And my association with Montfort Alumni Association is mostly with the project Psychological Horizons. And in Project Psychological Horizon, the aim of this program, as curated by all of us, is to help students and emerging professionals understand and stay informed about their multitude of opportunities out there in the field of psychology and mental health. Along with this, developing a realistic picture of things to expect, challenges, and life experiences that will aid in hopefully making an informed decision. So, on that note, we are on our 14th week talking to experts from different fields. And moving ahead to introduce Dr. Arun, who is an assistant professor and program coordinator at Montfort Institute. He holds an MPhil and a PhD from NIMHANS. He specializes in children, adolescent, and young adults. He has held various posts at Head Urban Street Projects, Butterflies NGO Delhi, Regional Research and Training Coordinator for RTTC, NIMHANS Bangalore, Junior Consultant PSW, and NIMHANS. Welcome on board, Arun.
Thank you.
Right. Next up, we have Awasha Venugopal. She's a lead at Quantum Consumer Solution. Post Montfort, Varsha graduated with a dual master's in psychology and child development from Michigan State University. She has spent the bulk of her career in the development sector, working with organizations in designing research studies to help them evaluate their program for outcomes and impact. Varsha has a background in qualitative research with experience working in domains such as education, skilling and livelihood, women empowerment, and rural development. Going back to her roots and love for qualitative research, Varsha now works as a lead at Quantum Consumer Solution. Welcome on board, Varsha.
Hi, great to be here.
Brilliant. Thank you. Next up with us is Avani. Avani is a creative learning and organization development consultant. As a creative learning and organization development consultant, Avani is passionate about learning, emotional well being, and inclusion. She believes in the power of human potential and is using her background in psychology to work towards enabling synergy between people and their organization. She enjoys facilitating healthy and safe spaces for individuals and their collective. So excited to have you all, Avni. Welcome on board, Avni.
Thank you, Vasha. Very happy to be here.
Brilliant. So I open the floor for conversation, and Arun, you can take ahead with this conversation. And yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Varsha. Good evening to all. And it is a great opportunity for me. And I would like to thank you, Montfort Alumni Association and other members. Varsha, Principal, all contacted me. And thanks, actually. When I see this topic, actually industry and psychology, and these days many students keep on asking about what are the opportunities available in this field. I feel we have a right young enthusiastic professional with us today, and I formally welcome Varsha and Avani for this panel discussion. We are very happy to have you today. Okay, and we like to listen a lot from both of you. And first, let us talk about your journey. Actually, being a psychology professionals, how you now you are occupying the positions in the industry or organization. How you find your role there actually, and what you do really, you contribute there, and how you work as a psychology professionals there. Either of you can start actually.
Great. Avani, go ahead. I can go next.
Sure. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to start, I think, a little bit at the beginning. So I ended up in psychology purely because I think I just did not want to do maths in 11th and 12th. So I said 11th and 12th, I want to do social science. I don't have to do maths for the rest of my life. And I remember sort of sitting in my first psychology class and just promptly falling in love with, I think, the subject, and just being so intrigued by, I think, the power of the mind and just this whole idea of understanding human behavior. And so I think by the time I came to 12th, I was like, psychology is what I want to do in life. And my first 2 years of bachelor's, I actually did a triple major course. So I did psychology, sociology, and economics. And then in my final year, I actually went in to do a psychology honors course, which meant that the last year I was doing just psychology and just papers in psychology. And I think what was really interesting for me is the first 4.5 years of studying psychology, I was like 110% sure that I wanted to be a clinical psychologist. I think that's just what I thought would be the most lucrative thing to do after psychology. I felt like what are the options there are? There is basically clinical psychology, right? And I remember sitting in my industrial psych class in my third year, and I'd already started applying for clinical psych programs. I'd started looking for scholarships and looking for like student loans and everything. And something I think my professor said during that class actually switched turn the light on, turn the switch on for me. And I remember sitting in that class and having this epiphany that industrial psychology is the space where I want to be, right? I want to be able to create healthy work experiences for people. That is the impact that I want to create, right? Most of us spend our adult lives working. There is no point doing that being miserable. And I think that was something that just really resonated with me. And I felt like that's really where I could contribute the most. And so I said, okay, I'm going to start looking at where I can study industrial psychology. And I started looking at colleges and master's programs and everything. And a lot of people would be unfamiliar with industrial psychology. They would say we have HRDM programs, so it would be human resource development programs. That's kind of how, not so much how it was pitched, but that was the content of the course. And industrial psychology or organizational psychology was almost like one paper or two papers that you do within the broader umbrella of HRDM. And I remember looking at sort of the curriculum of HRDM, not being fully convinced by it, because I think I still wanted something that looked at humans and human behavior and kept people and their experiences and their expectations and their needs at the center of everything that's built, right? And I started looking at, therefore, where can I actually do industrial psychology? And interestingly, Montfort's name came up. And I think Montfort used to have an industrial psych specialization before. And so that's how I found out about Montfort. And I was looking at, okay, there's an MSc General Psych program with, there is also a focus on industrial psychology within the larger program. And I think I was very intrigued by doing psychology in a more holistic sense at that time, right? I didn't feel like I wanted to go straight into a course that did industrial psychology, because I felt that in my third year, when I was doing all these multiple other papers of psychology, it really built my psychologist muscle. Like, it really stretched what it meant to be a psychologist. I was learning skills around skills around facilitation, skills around having conversations with people, skills around communication, skills around human-machine interaction, just really intriguing things that I felt would anyway help me as an industrial psychologist sometime in the future, right? That's kind of the perception I went into the program. After I graduated from Montfort, it was a very interesting experience because, like many people, I was very lost about what I wanted to do in life. I was kind of swimming in this ocean of possibilities. And I would get and I'd sort of started applying for internships, right? And I would get calls from people who were in recruiting, people who were doing headhunting, and they would call and say, oh, are you interested in an internship? And consistently people would look at, I would have these conversations and people would say, but we don't understand, you've done psychology, right? Why do you want to do this? Like, why do you want to get into like industries? Why do you want to get into like an organization? What's the connection between psychology and recruitment? And I remember being so confused, I guess, by their confusion, because I'm thinking, why would an understanding of human behavior not be connected to designing processes for human beings? Like, why is that connection not evident to you, right? But I think that's when I started thinking about, maybe I do need to do something that was specialized in industrial psychology, even if it's just to put on my resume. So when people open my resume, they see this immediate connect between, okay, organization, psychology, and organization, right? And so I started looking at, what can I do? Can I study further? Is there another master's I can do somewhere I can actually specialize in organizational psychology or industrial psychology? So in that interim, actually, I actually met this one gentleman who was working with corporates, and he wanted to develop an app for corporate wellness. So he was actually planning on designing this app that he could then license to organizations, and then organizations could actually use with their employees. So it was almost like this one-stop shop for corporate wellness, but it also included access to psychologists, access to other mental health professionals. So really being able to bring sort of this humanity to how wellness is seen in corporates, right? And so we met and we felt like this was just like a perfect synergy of his corporate experience and my psychology background. And it's something that we started working on together. I was primarily doing content development in that space, but it was really my first insight into corporates, right? Because I was going to pitch meetings, and I was interacting with entrepreneurs, and I was interacting with CEOs, and I started getting this little glimpse into what the corporate world could look like. So it was a really interesting, I think, first step for me. And then I actually got an offer to study in Ireland, to do organizational psychology as a course. And so because there was already this tiny voice in my head saying, you have to do it, otherwise no one's going to take you seriously in this field, I decided to actually go ahead and do that course. And so I went to Ireland, I did my organizational psychology course, and I was looking for work then. And what was really interesting for me is the field of organizational psychology or industrial psychology is not really very well developed in Ireland, right? And a lot of people were saying, oh my God, India is doing it really well. And I said, no, I don't think India is doing it really well. And they said, no, India is doing it really well, believe us. And I had professionals in Ireland telling me, go back to India and look for work in industrial psychology. You will find it in India. It is a big thing in India. People are now suddenly sort of woken up to the importance of having happy, engaged, safe, respected people at the center of everything that they do. And so I decided to actually come back to India. It was a tough call to make. I decided to come back after I finished my master's. And I started doing like these interviews, right? And I remember doing these interviews with pretty big corporates. And I would get interview calls because I'd put on my resume, and they have these initial screening, which is computerized, right? So it just picks up random keywords from your resume, sees if it fits into a role, and then you get an interview call. And I would get so many random interview calls where I would look at the call, I'd look at the job description, and I would be like, I don't understand 95% of the words in this job description, right? You've picked up the word usability in my resume, and you're offering me a coding job. Like, what is happening here? You know, I don't know why you think I can do this job. And I would go into some of these conversations, and I think I would come out of it feeling fairly disrespected, in the sense that it could be me, it could be just a random person they've picked up from the road, but just feeling like they don't care about who I am or all the skills that I could bring. I don't know if they're going to be truly invested in my growth, in my learning, in my, just what I can bring to the organization. And I think that did two things, okay? That experience of having these fairly random interviews. One was I was quite disillusioned because I said, everyone's saying India is doing it well, what's happening, But I think it reinforced for me the importance of doing something like industrial psychology or being in the space of organizational behavior. Because I said, your first interaction with an organization can't make you feel like they don't care about you. Because if I get that job, and I take that job for whatever reason, I am not going to be invested in it. I don't care. There's going to be a very tenuous link between me and that organization, right? And so for me, it was that. Like changing the way organizations and people build relationships with each other. right? For me, that was this like driving or motivating factor. And then I got this call. I work in a company called Glowworm Consulting. And I got an email from the founder saying that, hey, we came across your resume. We're really intrigued by the fact that there's so many diverse things happening, that you have studied so many different things. That's kind of what we also want to do in the people space. Would you like to interview with us? And so I did an application. I did like this entire interview process. It was like 5 rounds of very intense interviews. And I remember at the end of it feeling like if I got a job offer from here, I would be ecstatic. But even if I didn't get a job offer, I think I would still be very optimistic that there are organizations that still care, right? And organizations who are doing it well, and organizations who truly want to enable and empower people and keep people at the center of everything that they do. And I did luckily get the job, and I joined as a consultant. And it was a very steep learning curve. Arun, you said, what is it that you do in the job? Well, primarily I work as a consultant. We are a boutique consulting firm, so we work generally in the space of values and culture. We work in the space of performance management. We do leadership coaching. We work in the space of inclusion and diversity. So there's a lot of what that's, and as I work as a consultant, right? But I'd never been in an organization. I'd never really been inside a corporate. So that learning curve is very steep for me to actually sit as a consultant in a client conversation and make recommendations on corporate policy or make recommendations on people's experience of organizations without actually having experienced it myself. So there was a very steep learning curve. There was a lot of, I think I had to challenge myself a lot. My team was very supportive. But I think over time, I have now started narrowing down on what it is that I'm interested in doing in this space. And that's really values and culture, growth and inclusion and diversity. So that's kind of become my focus areas now. But that's kind of been the journey. I've been with this organization for 2 years, and it's been fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you, Avani. It's really quite a lot.
Yeah.
And you shared quite a lot of things actually. We'll come back to you, Avani, once we listen to Vasha. Vasha, it's over to you. You can make it a little brief actually.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. A lot of parallels in what Avani's journey was like. So, not going too far back, I think I stumbled upon psychology as a course, completely stumbled upon it. And much like many other people, didn't know too much about the course beyond, you can be a therapist, or, you can work in schools, or you can go into HR. Like literally, I thought these were the only 3 avenues when you do psychology. I did not know much about the course at all. And I did a BSc in psychology. So it was 3 years of just psychology and nothing else. So, in the process of studying the subject, I felt like I had gotten a glimpse into, what are the different avenues that you can go into. So OD was definitely one of it. HR was one of it. Working with kids was like, an entire different subject stream. And of course, there was the whole clinical psychology aspect of it. And at the time, given that, my knowledge of the subject was just what I was taught, not really realizing that it's about skill set. I think that I came to realize much, much later, like literally in the last 3 years is when I've discovered that in the process of my education, I've, honed a skill set that's applicable in so many different fields. So when I graduated from when I finished undergrad, I was so sure that I wanted to work with kids, right? I was 100% like gung-ho about it. I was just like, there's nothing else I want to do. I want to work with kids, and I want to work in the field of education and really impact what kids learn and how kids learn in school. So I was so sure about that, and started my course at Montfort, picked clinical psychology because I really wanted to understand how can you test and evaluate as a part of evaluating humans and how they learn and all of that. And because I wanted to be in this really specialized niche, what I thought was niche, at least at the time, I decided to go to the US and get another master's in child education and child development, right? I wanted to work with really young kids who, maybe come from challenging backgrounds. So, I picked a very, very niche program for my second master's. So I went to the US and I worked with Head Start schools. So these are government-funded schools for kids, from lower socioeconomic backgrounds who can't afford, public or any other form of private education. So we worked with teachers in Head Start programs. So that's a lot, like all of the research I did in my undergrad was working with teachers to really understand their attitudes towards teaching and how that impacts kids' education. And when I graduated, I was so sure I wanted to come back to India. So kind of the opposite of what Avani went through, because I was so sure I wanted to come back and work here in the development sector and work with government schools, work with non-profits in India in the education sector and really influence and impact. I had like a really like blue sky, I thought I'd be changing the landscape of education in India. And really I had all these like crazy thoughts and dreams of what I would actually land up doing. So came back and I mean, did work with some very, very nice organizations that were doing really, really good work in the education space. And I think as I was doing that, I think, because I was so sharply focused on, I want to do education, I want to do kids, I want this is what I want to do. I think I was not taking off my blinders and looking at, the skill set I had developed in the process, all of the other things that I was doing in the pursuit of wanting to work with kids, right? So I had learned how to, design programs for children. I had learned, a little bit about how to evaluate, monitor those programs for success and impact. I had learned a little bit about, all of the, the ecosystem that the kids reside in, how to work with all of those people. So I think slowly what I started realizing that as I was working with the first nonprofit that I worked for that, focused on just science education for children. I kind of realized what was exciting me was really like the whole monitoring and evaluation space, right? Like, how can you tell a program is successful if you're not able to measure it, especially when the parameters of what you're trying to it's not, at the end of the day, it's not like, oh, they got 50 in maths and now they're getting 60 in maths, so therefore they're doing better. But it's about the holistic environment of, how are they doing better all around? And because the parameters are so, they're not tangible, I think I was really interested and excited in trying to figure out how do you sort of measure these non-tangible aspects of development, right? So I think in the process of that, I realized that monitoring and evaluation is what I actually wanted to do. And it's not really about just working with kids, but across sectors, right? So whether it's women empowerment, whether it's rural development, but still very much staying in the social sector to say, this is what I'm interested in now. I want to monitor programs. I want to evaluate how programs are doing better or can be tweaked to, really get the outcomes that we're hoping to get. So then I worked for a little boutique consulting firm in Bangalore that used to work, they still do work, in the social sector. So they consult for the social sector. So they work with nonprofits who are looking to develop programs, who are looking to sort of create impact, like at a grassroots level. And I used to work with them to sort of help them monitor and evaluate their programs. So really setting up like monitoring and evaluation frameworks, designing measurable tools that would help them measure outcome and impact. And in the process of that, I realized, I've learned another skill set, and what I actually really truly enjoy doing currently is looking at a data set, right? Like data is what I thoroughly enjoy right now. Looking at data to really understand what is coming out of this, right? Because ultimately you design programs for humans, right? You design it, it's very people-centric. So, so that person saying, I feel X way or I don't feel X way because of that to say, okay, that's a certain outcome. Like that's what I'm thoroughly enjoying. And I think, that's really what brings me to say that it's the skill set that I've developed in the process of, all of these different things that I was so sure that I wanted to do. And then, realized maybe that's not what I want to do. So currently I work, at a qualitative research firm, into human insight. So really the human is the center of everything that we do, right? So why are you doing a certain thing? How do you feel when you do it? How should you be feeling? What are clients hoping that they feel when they're, using a certain product or a service? and then changing it and tweaking it, and really giving them the strategies to help people feel a certain way, or so ultimately that is where I've landed up.
Yeah, thank you, Vasha. It's really interesting. I think it's from both of you what I understood. Both of your journeys are not the normal way of journey. You studying this, getting to know, that's something different. You both of you are actually sharing the information. It's related to something more than what you simply speaking about industrial psychology. Generally, when the people say that industrial psychology, it's either related to the people welfare or connecting with the product and service and customer. You both of you actually going to be much more than that. Actually, see how the diversity is happening, how the knowledge and where Avani was saying that when the different set of skill set actually used in different levels, and the way Vasha saying actually the human is center. And I could really sense the first time I'm listening, psychology professional, somebody saying that monitoring and evaluation. Somebody's interested. See, it's all interesting actually. See, from we usually send the normal way of thinking is industrial counseling or industrial psychology is this much. No, there are something more than that. So, in continuation with both of your short informations, actually, I like to ask about that one. When you say that skill set, you said that you own skill set in the process. Can you please elaborate a little more that on how the young professionals, budding professionals can really consciously take effort to build their skills which can be used to in industrial or organizational field, it's using the psychology?
Sharni, do you want to go first? Then I can.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Vasha. So, yeah, Arun. So, interesting. I think for me, the first thing would be just theoretical understanding. I think it's very important, right? So, Vasha was talking about how she realized that she had picked up skill sets, frameworks from just the diverse things that she's done. And I think even with industrial psychology, there's so many theories around even things like motivation, things like engagement that are important for you to understand, right? So I'd say just even first familiarizing yourself with all of those theories at just a very basic level, that these theories exist. This is what this theory is saying, right? Once you do that, to actually then start actively thinking about what does this theory look like in the practical sense, right? So let's say you take a theory, even just a simple Google search of how do organizations use this, right? Or how do learning functions use this with organizations, right? Just one, building sort of this compendium of theories and frameworks for yourself, and then thinking actively about what does this look like in real life? What does this look like when I apply it to such and such organization? What does it look like when I apply it to such and such problems, right? And I'd say don't limit yourself to industrial psychology theory. So within the paper of industrial psychology, there are frameworks and theories you'll come across, right? But look at things like even education, higher education. There's a wealth of information around how adults learn, how adults process information. How do you design programs, like Vasha was saying? How do you monitor programs? How do you evaluate impact? And I think just being able to build that repertoire for yourself can be just a great first in building that knowledge, right? Second really help me just being really up to date on what is happening across the world. So even if you're looking at like your Gallup reports or your HBR reports or a Deloitte report, just understanding what are the trends in industries across the world today. It gives you great insight into what are some of the emerging needs that people have in organizations. It also gives you great insight into what organizations across the world are doing. So just really interesting case studies, really interesting strategies. And it can really help inform the way you think about a certain problem as well, right? So I think just consistently finding these sources and making sure that you're reading up on what is happening around you in the industry today. I think the third thing that's really helped me is communication. Is just being aware of station, like your preferred style of communication, and then not that, basically, right? So active listening, that communication it's been a big help, especially within the consulting space. It really helps you tailor the way you have conversations with your clients. It really tailors the way you're able to do your discovery interviews with clients, right? That is something that's helped me very much. And I think within communication, I think I do actually have a book recommendation, and I recommend this to everybody. It's a book called Humble Inquiry. It's written by this person called Edgar Schein, right? And irrespective of what you're doing, whatever your role is, I think everybody needs to read this book, because it really talks about how do you ask to understand. Many of us ask to ask questions, but this is a very simple, it's a short, extremely practical book around how do you ask questions to understand where someone is coming from. It's been personally extremely helpful for me in facilitation. It's been extremely helpful for me with consulting. It's been extremely helpful with like even doing focus group discussions or interviews. It's just been a phenomenal shift in my own brain in terms of how I connect with people. So I think that is something that I really recommend everyone reads. And I think something else that's probably more relevant today is just virtual tools. So even if you're familiar with things like facilitation, even if you're familiar with those kind of experiences, I think just to think about what does that mean when you're doing it virtually, it's not the same, right? And I think a mistake that I made in the beginning of my sort of career is to try and mimic in-person facilitation virtually. That's not going to happen. So just really even thinking about how do I leverage, actually make the most of virtual tools, the resources around me, even if it's Zoom, even if it's Google Hangout, whatever, just to think of how does facilitation look different when I'm doing virtually? How does engagement look different when I'm doing it virtually, right? So that can be a really interesting muscle to build for yourself. And
Avani,
yes.
Can I interrupt you?
Yes, that was my last point. Anyway. Yeah.
Yes, please go ahead.
No, that was my last point.
Yeah, okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Vasha, over to you. You're muted, actually.
Sorry, after 2 years of online, you still don't get used to unmuting yourself on time. I actually agree with a lot of things that Avani said. So for me, the whole, like developing a skill set, a lot of it has just been trial and error. And also this whole idea, I think is something Avani also mentioned, is to really look at, theories and look at how they can be applied beyond where they are, theoretically applied. For instance, like, even education theories can be used in how brands use them to like persuade consumers to come and buy certain things or use certain things. Even social media habits, right? Like the way you engage with social media. For instance, there are so many theories around that can apply to so many other things. So definitely, like really just looking at where those theories can go beyond where they're applied, I think is a great way to sort of hone that skill set, to look at, okay, I have this theoretical knowledge, but, it's not that it can only be applied in this field, but it can, like, to really look at where else it can be applied. And a lot of it does come, I feel like things change all the time, and especially in the last 2 years because of, the pandemic and all of that, I feel like change in the field is so accelerated that, what was there yesterday is no longer there today, and like something completely new is there like tomorrow. So I completely agree with Avani to just stay super up to date, read as much as you can, and just be aware of what's happening. And I feel like, as much as they say whatever social media is not good for you and everything, I feel like, if you can train your social media to give you the kind of news that you're looking for, it's a great place to be, like super up to date on what's happening in the field, in the sector, anything.
Thank you, Vasha. Actually, both of you answered the other question as well about actually the competency. If you see that in any other field as compared to the clinical psychology, school mental health, any other field, the specialization, I feel that the psychology or industrial organizational psychology field is, we experience kind of dynamic changes, rapid changes. So that both of you answered in terms of actually how need to be updated, and we need to be super updated. That's great. Thank you. That's really a valid point. And my next question, as we are in this era, is actually we speak about artificial intelligence, design thinking, and machine learning, where it's actually fast moving and fast growing in the industrial means organizational settings, where we come and we speak about how it's important of psychology and human behavior, and we realized it. Okay, and I could see that one in both of your early experiences. I very clearly say that one how we bring this attention and how this bring this point that this is something very important, and it is glad to know that you both of you could find your space in industries. And my question is, what the educational institution can do to ensure that when we inculcate and we ensure that that competency in our students to match with them, the match with the need of present scenario. Vasha, you can start.
Yeah, sure. I think this is one of, like this like forum, just bringing different people from different, who have gone through a similar like academic training to see where they've landed up today. I think is one great way to do it, because I think we were talking just before, we started the formal session, that this is something neither Avani nor I had when we were at college or any, whether it was undergrad, masters, wherever it was. You sort of just stumble your way through, and you meet someone by chance, and then they say, oh, I do this, and then you start thinking, oh, maybe I could do that. So I think just this forum and having the opportunity to meet people who've studied similar things. I know very few people. I know at least in like my cohort and my sister's cohort, very few people land up doing what they've actually studied. They would have trained in something and then be doing something completely different altogether. But I feel like, especially people who do something so specialized, like getting a master's in psychology, like unless you genuinely want to go down a path that has something to do with that field, you wouldn't opt for it, right? But what you land up doing there, can change. Or, you sort of figure it out as you sort of embark on that journey and, apply for jobs here and there. And something Avani touched upon earlier also, like, not knowing what to put on your resume, because you don't know the kinds of jobs that are out there, right? You put on your resume hoping you get the job for the job that you want, not, but you don't know what else is out there. So I think, maybe some kind of training in that could help. I know I could have benefited greatly from, just knowing like the way you phrase what you can land up doing with this degree. That's about it. I don't really have anything else. But,
So I completely agree with Varsha. I think just forums like this, just knowledge around how do you actually go about looking for a job, like just the technicalities of it, very helpful. I think two other points. One is just in the teaching itself. I think we tend to do a lot of theory, like focus a lot on theory, right? It's a focus a lot on, okay, this is the framework, this is what this person said, this person who developed the framework, these are the pros and cons. But actually, maybe slightly switching it into what does it look like in practice, right? Bringing in case studies, bringing in real life experiences, almost like a lab where people can play around, explore options, explore what they would do in such situations. I think just giving space for that experimentation. So bringing theory into practice can be a great way for people to just build that kind of competency. And I think the second thing is really just access to people in the field, so access to professionals in the field, and access to even just projects or internships. So even just awareness of it, these are the organizations that are looking at these they want this kind of person to join them, these are the projects they're doing. So like a college can be a fantastic conduit for that, right? So I think those two things would be very helpful, just giving that in to students to be able to practice. Yeah.
It is rightly said, actually. Exactly. We need more practical aspect in our in educational settings. And in addition, actually, Vasha said the valid point. Actually, most of the time, this year we use this time for applying this job. Next year, that time won't be there. Actually, even literally, I also experience same thing, and that is the drastic change happen every time. They keep on changing it, what they really want. That the refinement is happening. Actually, that is exactly the we could experience that. Actually, thank you. And I have something related to you, both of your work actually. So Vasha, you are very keen, very passionate about speaking about. I could see that on how you're channelizing the qualitative research into industrial psychology and using and getting that on the subtle aspect of a material. What do you really exactly do with the qualitative research and the psychology in your industry?
Yeah. So, like I was saying, so currently, like where I work, we work with brands. So we help brands sort of with strategy, whether whether it's launching a new product or understanding how consumers are currently relating to a particular product or how they're using it. So really, we talk to consumers to understand how they feel about things, and then decoding that data to then tell the client or the brand, how they can use that to change their strategy. So that's really how we're doing it. But then in my old job when I used to work in the social sector, we used to use the data to inform programs, right? So for instance, if you're developing a program in the field of education or women empowerment, so to really understand the audience for which you're developing that program, so to talk to them to really find out what needs they have. So what happens more often than not is, the program is made and then you sort of try to retrofit it to some audience. You say, okay, I have this education program and I'm going to go to Assam and roll it out in this government school in Assam. But is that what the government school in Assam needs, right? Because their ecosystem of where those kids grow up and what they do is very different from, a government school in Karnataka, for instance, right? So to really do an understanding of the community that you want to work with, to understand what they need, when they need it, so sometimes you might be giving them something that, they're not ready to receive yet, right? Because other systems and processes aren't put in place yet. So to really understand from a qualitative standpoint, where are they, how do they feel, what do they want? So, when you talk to them and you collect that data and you do it, so what I love about qualitative research is it's not width, but it's depth, right? So you take 10 people and you understand them fully and thoroughly, and then you sort of use that data to then extrapolate it to the community as well. So that's really how we use it.
So that integration takes place.
Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah.
Avani, multiple times you use three words. Okay, that's ethics, value, culture. Okay, when you say ethics, value, and culture, what are the most, the major challenge you face when you give a consultant service to different organization? Why is it difficult to integrate this culture, or what kind of a difficulty you face? Make them to orient, make them to implement, and that's one aspect of the question. And the second aspect, how it will be helping them to get, their business.
Sure. I think they're both interconnected, actually. So I'll start with the first one. I think the challenge that seems to exist is one is people write like their values framework. They have like their culture. So they have your vision, your mission, everything's written down in an organization, right? But very few people know what it means or what it looks like in action. Right? Very few people in the organization. So, for example, I could say integrity is a value here, but what does integrity look like in action? I don't know. Right? What does integrity look like when I'm making decisions or when I'm interacting with the person? I don't know. Right? And very often this I don't know even starts right from leadership. So it's not so much that only some employees in the organization don't know what it looks like. It's sometimes even leadership doesn't know how to champion these values or how to champion this culture, right? And because leadership doesn't do it, it trickles down into everyone just doing things their own way. And that is a big cost to an organization, right? It's a big cost to an organization where individuals are taking decisions based on personal values or personal frameworks and things like that, right? There's a reason why you want a unified framework. So I think that's been a challenge, right? Making sure that people understand what it means to them in their everyday life, right? I think the second challenge, very interestingly, has been because of the pandemic. Because so many things became remote, because it became virtual working, there were a lot of people who joined sometimes even their first job virtually, right? They haven't met their teams. They don't have that sense of connect to the organization where you're able to occupy physical space, where you go and you see boards, you see like welcome signs, you have like water cooler conversations. People missed out on a lot of those experiences. So a big challenge in terms of values and cultures, how do you actually build that connect with the larger organization? How do you build that engagement with the larger organization? How does someone feel committed to the larger organization if they're only seeing the same 4 or 5 faces every day? So that is another, I think, big challenge. And your second question was around the costs, right? Arun, just to reiterate, was Arun stuck?
I think we may have lost that one.
Yeah. Go on, Avani, on the cost bit, yeah?
Yeah. So
If you wanted to clarify the question.
Yeah, I wanted to clarify. Arun, sorry, we lost you for a few seconds.
Yeah.
Oh.
You're on mute, Arun. I think Avani wanted to clarify the question.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So what was your second question? It was around the cost?
Yeah, so first part is really, you answered very well. I'm just noting down. And the second aspect is that, you mentioned, indirectly you mentioned that how then when you people take a different value system and they will practice how it is cost to the organization. That's one way to see it. And on the other hand, how it has helped the organization as a business model, actually.
No, I think it's that. See, when people come in, just even if you look at yourself individually, if I come into a new team and I don't feel like I know what I'm doing, right? I don't know what to anchor my decisions around. I don't know what my role is in this organization. I don't understand what my impact or contribution is to the organization. That experience can be very disconnecting. And what happens is I'll leave because I'm like, this is not working out for me. Right? So from both experiences, both from the organization's perspective and the individual's perspective, it's just, there's no compatibility there, right? And something that we've noticed is also just high turnover, people leaving because they don't feel like they fit in. But it's just, when it's done right, it can just lead to incredible improvement in productivity, in efficiency, in engagement. All of that then, of course, flows into just people feeling respected. What is their mental health? How are they able to create boundaries for themselves? How are they able to collaborate? How do they work with conflict? So it all flows into each other. So I guess that's the answer.
I guess
yes.
Happy people, happy process.
Exactly.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
It was really nicely answered that, actually. See, if Vasha permit, I'd like to ask one more question. Yeah, thank you. See, this we can consider as formally, our last question. Then we can see that any other question from audience. So my last question is actually future and scope of psychology in industry and organization. So you can very briefly, you can still, what is your understanding?
Go ahead, Avani.
Perfect.
Yeah, okay. To be very honest, I feel like I'm still discovering it today. Just given, how, head fast, narrow my view was. Like the job I have today, I didn't even know existed until I got this job 2 years ago, right? So I feel like I'm still discovering it today, and that's why, I keep, even skills, even people ask me now, okay, but you did a background in psychology and how come, you're doing this? And I see a very clear link, right? Because unless you understand people and humans, you won't be really able to advise any brands to do anything about it, right? So I still feel like I'm in the process of discovering it today. And going back to something that Avani had said earlier, even just the manner in which you communicate, right? Like that is something you need in any job, right? And even just understanding that how like when you're working with clients, for instance, right? So clients are also people at the end of the day, right? So to really understand how they function, what you need to say or not say or do or not do in order to get certain things done, I still feel like, comes a lot from my training in the field. So for me, really, I think at the end of the day, it's just a skill set that's applicable in so many different fields that I feel like I'm still discovering it today. How I feel.
Very similarly, I think I'm still trying to understand the scope of it, but I think my gut feeling is that there is a lot of incredible work to be done. Simply because of, I think just in the last 2.5 years, the number of clients who have come to us and said, listen, we want to do people strategy right. We want to do right by the people that we bring into our organization. So I'm seeing there's so much intent there. And given that there's so much intent, I think that bodes well for the future of industrial psychology and organizational behavior. And I think actually just building on Vasha's point of her saying she didn't know this job existed till 2 years ago, right? User experience, human machine interaction, those are actually really big spaces you can consider. They're not exactly industrial psychology, but there's a lot of similar skills that go into it. And those are really, really big areas. They're really booming right now. And it's honestly something I considered myself, user experience. So user experience research, usability testing, those are things that people can consider if they are already looking at industrial psychology as well.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And a lot of work that we do, we work with tech firms, right? To understand how and why people engage with technology.
Yeah.
Whether it's an app, whether it's a platform, whatever it may be. So for sure, I almost see it as growing as, exponentially as technology is today, because they're so interlinked, because ultimately the people who uses technology are people, right? So if you need to build technology that's people friendly, then there's so much that, the field can do there as well.
Thank you. Awasha, do we have any other questions?
Yes. First of all, thank you guys for your incredible inputs on all the questions that Arun was asking. We do have a couple of questions that's come around. But before we go there, I just wanted to add some more thoughts. I think one aspect of it is during the conversation, we spoke about resume. And I think Vasha rightly mentioned of how it would be interesting to have some sort of a training program where people, try to build their resume in the right way. And Avani also was talking about how there are softwares which are developed in terms of which would filter out your resumes just by the keywords. So I think resume building itself is such a important task in any sort of a field that you would have to jump in, whether it is an academic professional curriculum vitae or a resume that you build for any organization. So I think that is some incredible points that you brought forward. And towards the end, I think you both touched upon the user experience research and artificial intelligence and machine learning. I think as a pattern, we have noticed that while in this particular initiative, we have met research executives, we have met consultants and marketers. At some point, everybody did touch upon the idea of user experience research and how that is so important in terms of the field that it's growing into and how they want a person from a psychology background who's able to understand this human-machine interaction and bring in their thoughts for it. So I think that was something incredible. And for the audience, I would like to say, if you are interested to go back to understand user experience research and something to touch upon that, I think in one of the sessions with research executives and one of the other sessions with the consultant and marketers, we did slightly touch upon on both the resume bit and the user experience bit. So that's some thoughts that I would add to. And we do have a couple of questions, and I have just noted the time. Is it okay if I can grab the next 15 or less minutes from you?
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Brilliant, thank you. So one of the question is, for someone looking for a similar career trajectory, what would be 3 golden nuggets of advice that you would give? Anybody could go first.
3 golden nuggets.
Ooh, tough one. So this is something like I picked up very, very recently. I think I would always be really hesitant to ask people what they're doing, or to even just ask questions, because there's so much. I don't know. I just felt like I've always felt the need to know exactly what I'm talking about, or to know exactly what I want to do. So for a long time, even like what I'm doing now, I used to find very hard to articulate the kind of job I even wanted to do. And I feel like, it is like, when I was making this shift from the social sector to the corporate world, where, I really started talking to people because it was something completely new to me, right? And I think it's okay to say, listen, I really don't know what's out there, because I still stand by the fact that I don't know what else is out there. I'm doing this now and I love doing it. But did I think when I left Montfort that this is what I'd be doing? Absolutely not. So, but at the same time, like, I love what I do, and I didn't know it existed, and I know now only because I spoke to people, right? So I think I don't know if I have 3 golden nuggets, but one definitely is I think talk to people, describe what you want to do, find out what else you can do. You don't really have to know it all, or even pretend like you know it, because I for sure didn't, right? And I feel like that's what really helps you discover what else is out there.
That's a fantastic point. Something similar, I think, for me would be networking. I'm not very good with networking, okay? So I'm saying from personal experience, it's okay to be aggressive with it. It's okay. And I think that it's also important in today's day and age. That's kind of where we are. Even if it means just reaching out to people on LinkedIn. It doesn't mean you have to send out your resume, but just reach out to people who are interested in the kind of work they do. Reach out, find out what they're doing. Tell them this is where your area of interest is. If you already know people in like allied fields, send your a little bit aggressive about it. I think for me, networking was never about get me the job. It was at least get me the opportunity, right, to do an interview, or the opportunity to meet someone in the field. So just really leverage all of those connections you have without feeling very guilty or shy, or feel like you're, overstepping your boundaries. So I think that would be an addition, or maybe building on Varsha's point there.
Yeah. And I think also the other thing with networking, like my advisor when I was in grad school told me, like, the worst someone can say is no, right? And fine, you'll move on. Okay, they'll say, I don't have time to talk to you.
Yeah,
no.
exactly.
Right? Like, that's
something
the
will
worst
hit. Yeah.
that can happen. Yeah. But, I mean, it may not be a fruitful conversation, or really it can lead to something. So, and I agree with that. I mean, it's not like I'm great at networking. I still reread emails 10,000 times if I'm like sending out an email randomly to someone, have I phrased this correctly? What am I saying here? So I think just do it more. It's something I want to do more. And I hope, had I done it more earlier when I was younger, maybe, I would have been like found a job sooner or whatever. But yeah, I fully agree with her. It's really about just reaching out to people.
Yeah. Thank you both. I think both are very important nuggets to have, I would say, because firstly, in terms of networking, I would completely relate of how important it is to just make that conversation. As I think Avani rightly put, it's not necessarily you will have to find a job or land a job in that networking. It's at least you'll be aware of somebody working in that particular path. And for me, it is something in terms of at least you are aware that some sort of an opportunity exists. So it's really important in terms of networking, and such platforms such as LinkedIn are really useful if you use it in a proper professional manner. So I would completely agree. I think even when Varsha's conversation on talking to people, it's also somewhere touching upon communication and networking. So I think that's the current era. So that's a great point that you both have brought forward. Going to the next question, what are the habits that have helped you to keep on track when you are in your career pathway? Any sort of a habits that you feel like, this has helped me build my career?
Sure. So finding newsletters or any publications that are very similar to the kind of work that you do, I make sure that I read, like, even if it's like literally like this big an article, whatever it is, something related to my field, I read one thing every day, right? Like, I begin my day by reading that one thing that's relevant to my field. It may be a client I'm working with, Like we do a lot of work with Amazon, for instance. So, if there's an article in the newspaper about Amazon, like literally, like while drinking my coffee, I'll read it. Right? You may not understand all of it, but, it's relevant to my field. It's someone we work with. So just one piece of information that you're reading that's, beyond work, beyond what you read for work, one new piece of like any kind of information that you can read every day. So that's something I've just started doing off late. Again, please, I'm not like some person who's like always doing this. It's something I try to do and have tried to do more of lately.
Yeah, very similar. I was going to say just reading, just being aware of what is happening in that field. Your algorithm will anyway pick it up at some point and start recommending the same kinds of things anyway. But just even like I was saying, looking at Gallup, looking at HBR, looking at Deloitte reading, looking at Forbes, those are all great sources of information about what's happening. There's really interesting perspectives on there. You may not agree, but it just challenges you to think, right? The other thing is, even I think going back to Vasha's earlier point of social media, right? So actually finding experts in the field, just following them, seeing what they're doing. You'll see a lot of people doing very specific kinds of research. So if you use Twitter, you use LinkedIn to actually go and see what are other industrial psychologists doing, what are other UX researchers doing. So just going and kind of following their work can also be a really interesting way to build that muscle. It's something that I've started doing very recently as well. And the third, I think, habit that's really helped me is with the theories, right? Because so much of our education, like I said, is theoretical. So I actually have this book of like theories and frameworks. Every time I come across a theory or framework, I've started actually writing it down. And so when there is a challenge or when there is a client, like a deliverable, actually go back to flip through that book, see, okay, what theory, what framework might actually work here. So I think just having that collection of information has been really helpful for me as a habit as well.
Amazing. Thanks for bringing those points in. I think one important point that I think Avani just mentioned, any which way your algorithm will pick up, so you just have to make one search. So that's exciting. And in fact, of how you can, module your social media to set into the way that your life expectation or your career expectation is. So I think people say you attract things that you think of. So it's pretty much the same in the user experience world as well. In terms of you start thinking of it, definitely there is some sort of an advertisement that will pop up on your social media channel. So it's just one point that you will have to go ahead and search. So I think both of it is incredible habits, and I myself am struggling to find and keep myself updated with the field. So that's something that I would take forward personally as well. Going forward with the last question, so it's about the infamous topic about work-life balance. What it is like in this line of work? How is it for both of you?
There are good days and there are bad. I think there are, for sure, there are busy times where you feel like, all you do is work and nothing else. There are leaner periods where, you definitely have more time to do other things and, you wrap up your day by 6. Something I've learned very recently to do is, I think it also comes with the luxury of like hybrid or remote or whatever it may be. If you're working from home, that's great. Is to find pockets of time. So something I've learned very recently. So, if a meeting gets cancelled or, you finish something sooner than you had planned to, and you earned yourself, 45 minutes, you do something in that 45 minutes, you can work out, you can read, whatever it may be. So really finding these little pockets of time in busy times, I feel has really helped me. And I think work from home really affords you that luxury, right? Like if I have 45 minutes in the middle of the day, I'll use it to work out or, go out for a run quickly and come back, whatever it may be. So that's really how I look at it. And really, like I said, there are good days and bad. There are times where it's going to be really busy and, you really feel like all you do is work. And it's okay because there will, it's not going to be forever, right? So you just take it as it comes.
Yeah, I agree very, very strongly with that. I think in Glowworm, we also do like, we have unlimited leave and we also have mental health days off. That's been very helpful. I think just being very cognizant of, in the weekend, I'm not going to work unless not even unless I really need to, like making sure things are done by Friday, just having that separation for myself. But I think what's been really the biggest learning is, especially during the pandemic, there was a lot of things around, oh, how do you make productive use of your time, right? And I think it's part of the habit that initially I was very overwhelmed that, oh, people around me seem to be really productive with everything that they're doing. So even if they're taking like an hour off for themselves, they're like learning something or they're practicing something. And that's also very important. But I think I've learned to not get too caught up with this whole, like, I suppose the toxic positivity movement of like keep doing things, to just literally, like, if I have half an hour and I just feel like vegetating, to actually just vegetate, just like building on what Vasha said, like how use that time however just makes the most sense to you, like to just be able to separate what everyone else around you is saying you should be doing with your time, just making sense of that for yourself has been something that's really helped me.
Perfect. No, for sure. Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Perfect. So I think it's more about finding your balance than about looking for, do I have a balance? So that sort of is an interesting point forward. But just to like sort of throw this question back again, have there been situation in your work life where you've been asked to work outside your working hours, and have you been able to say, no, this is outside my working hours, is it okay for me to look into it later? Have you used your assertiveness skills to build on that, or have you taken it to the fact that it's an important deliverable and I'll have to do it maybe for the pressure from the leadership or whatever? So yeah, I'm sorry, it's a very strong question, but you can answer how you would like to.
Yeah. I think for me, it's very, very situational dependent. The team that I work with is all very, very, cognizant of each other's time, very respectful. If I'm off, they, in fact, like if they get a message from me on a day I'm off, they ignore it. Like they don't even get back to me. They're like, you're off, I'm not even going to respond to you. So I think a lot of it comes from the relationships that you build with the people that you're working with. It's not like management pressure or anything like that. It's really the team that you're working with, right? So if you're taking time off, or you're having a hard time, if you build those relationships, people will help you out in those times and say, okay, fine, she's off or whatever, and we can help out. And we do it for each other, right? So similarly, if someone else in the team is needing some time off, I'm happy to pick up the slack and work outside of my billable hours or whatever that may be. So I truly believe it's very situational dependent. There have been times I have said no as well. Like if the client is asking for something and it's late at night, it's too last minute. There have been times in which I have said no and pushed back a little bit. So it's very, very situational dependent. But I feel like a lot of it stems from the relationships that you make at the workplace.
Yes, completely agree. It's actually very, very similar. I think it's a conversation we were having at work mid-2020 that we do so much consulting around work, mental health and keep people and engagement and all of that it would be really ridiculous to not apply those principles to the way we work within the organization as well. So I don't think there's ever been a point in time where I've had to push back internally. I think with clients, we've had to sometimes, but there is a decision-making framework we use about whether this works or not, this makes sense or not, is this something we want to do now or not, or if we want to push back, how do we want to push back? I think internally, very similar to Vasha, I think sort of threatened into not working when I'm on leave or, so I think going back to that, I think it's just that, the relationships.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like internally, it depends on like the team that you work with and how you set that up. Of course, there will be external pressure that you can deal with, however. Yeah. And I'm sure the organization itself has a way to deal with that. And you feel supported enough to say no to a client or whatever, exactly. And the organization supports you in that, then power to you.
Yeah. I've had those conversations, like a client will ask something. I've reached out to people in my team saying, hey, I don't know how to respond to this. I'm not sure. And then we've had conversations and we've come together to figure out how we want to respond. So it's, for sure.
Yeah. Sounds good. completely relatable. So that question was because I think in one of the sessions we were talking about how there is some sort of a toxic positivity where people are running behind working like 16 ridiculous hours a day, and I'm glad like some of us are able to work properly for the billing hours, or just extend a couple of hours in case there is an emergency deliverable. But the other side is there are people who are also working ridiculous hours to who are not able to make those conversations or not having a proper culture. And I think that's where I would say Avni's role also plays a major importance in terms of strategically building those human relationships in the organization to work around. So I think that's questions from our end. But there's just one clarification I would like to make with Avni. I think Avni, you mentioned about a book, and it's Humble Inquiry.
Inquiry, yes.
Inquiry, yeah.
I am, yeah.
Ian, okay. So is it the gentle art of asking instead of telling by? Yeah. All right. So we just wanted to make a note of that so that we'll put out in the comment section below for any of our audience to look at it.
Yeah.
So I think that's that from our end. It was an incredible conversation from you guys, and thanks for making your time and joining in with us this week. We are extremely excited again to meet other professionals in the next weeks, but it was a brilliant conversation with you guys this time. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Asha.
Thank
Same
you.
here.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
Thank you so much
Our
for having
pleasure.
us. And it's like it's just incredible what you're doing and super, super helpful. So thank you so much for all the effort you're putting into it.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Avani. Thank you, Varsha. Thank you,
Thank you
Arun.
so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thanks for your time. Arun, thank you.
I mean, Arun's on mute.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think network issues.
Yeah.
maybe.
Thank you, Arun, if you can hear us.
Yeah,
All
thank you,
right.
Arun.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Yeah,
Bye,
bye.
Varsha.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Avni.
Bye. Bye. Bye, Varsha.
Bye,
Lovely
bye.
meeting you.
You
Me
too.
too.
Bye.
Bye.
Nice
Bye,
meeting. Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye.